The fallout from Donald Trump's conviction. From the moment jurors found Trump guilty on 34 felony counts, the former president and his allies have gone on offense, looking to turn his historic legal loss into a political win.
This is a scam. There's a rigged trial.
Donald Trump vowing to fight back.
I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country.
His allies and potential running mates also quick to attack the verdict.
This is the weaponization of the justice system against their political opponent.
This was an attack job. This is what you see in banana republics.
Trump's sentencing set for July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican convention.
This is going to be such a tough call for Judge Merchan.
The big question, whether the former president could get jail time.
Any other defendant who was similarly situated to Donald Trump, who is not going to show remorse, anyone else in that position would get prison.
The conviction doesn't prevent Trump from running for or serving as president.
There's really no projecting how this is going to impact the race.
But while a guilty verdict may not change most voters' minds, 7% of Trump supporters in a recent poll said they'd be less likely to vote for him if he's convicted.
Even a small change in the entire electorate could make a massive change when you have a margin that is this close.
Here with me today, podcaster and author Kara Swisher. Reihan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute and National Review contributing editor. New York Times journalist and podcast host Lulu Garcia Navarro. And author and conservative pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson. Welcome back, everyone. Kristen, you've seen these recent polls I just referred to, where 6 to 7% of Trump supporters said they might reconsider their support if he were convicted. Can a convicted felon be elected president? How much has the developments this week, how much have they hurt his chances of winning in November?
Well, we'll know a little bit next week when the first polls come out of the field. I'm a pollster. I love to rely on that data. But even in the absence of that, I still feel pretty confident that, yes, a convicted felon, if it's Donald Trump, can still win election or rather re-election as president. Right now, when I look at polls, I see a lot of voters that don't like Donald Trump personally. They don't think he's a good guy, but they still think he's better on the economy. The fact that he is now a convicted felon in court doesn't necessarily change how would he perform on issues like who's going to make cost of living better. So I can imagine this not necessarily changing the race until sentencing. The question of do I want to vote for somebody who is actually looking at prison time is different than the question of do I think Donald Trump is a good or bad person? And that's where I'm really waiting to see do the polls move.
All right, we're going to get to that in a minute. But Lulu, we had never had a president who had ever faced criminal charges. Now we have a former president running for re-election who's been found guilty on 34 charges. How big a roadblock do you think that is to him the rest of this campaign?
I disagree with Kristen because I actually think it's going to be a substantial roadblock. I think it takes time for this kind of thing to settle in. We're just seeing all the messaging going out. We're seeing Republicans coming and repeating the same words over and over again. Banana Republic, fraud. And that is
kangaroo court.
Kangaroo court, that's another one of their favorite ones. And what we're seeing is that that's going to, people are going to listen to that and they're going to make their own decision. But ultimately, do we want to have a president that is a convicted felon? Whatever you think of our justice system, this is a huge deal.
Reihan, as we said in the piece, Trump will be sentenced on July 11th. That's just 4 days before the Republican convention. You heard that former prosecutor in New York say anybody in this situation who had been found guilty of violating a gag order 10 times, who'd shown absolutely no remorse, would face jail time. Do you think that Trump should get jail time?
I don't. And I also suspect that Judge Merchan is not going to give him a prison sentence. I think it's more likely that there will perhaps be a fine or probation, something along those lines, partly because surely he understands this is someone who's 77 years old. This is the first time he's been involved with the criminal justice system in this way. And also that, this whole case relies on a very novel legal theory. This is something that is going to, go up to an appeal very, very soon. I think that it would be really dicey to impose a prison sentence in this case.
Kara, should the former president be sentenced to spend some time in jail?
You'd be surprised if I say no. It's the office, not him. It's just, the way we sent Nixon away to California. He cannot be incarcerated. He could maybe have some home incarceration. Maybe he wears something. I don't know, something else. But it shouldn't be incarceration. It's just not. We're right now in a really dicey period of distrusting all our institutions, and it seems. It will help him. It will help the MAGA people. It's not good for America, like for America as a whole, to do that.
Lulu, you agree with that?
I'm conflicted. I don't want to be sitting in Judge Merchan's shoes. It's a very, very difficult decision. But if the idea is that you are supposed to be equal under the law, then you should be equal under the law. And so if the decision is that that is what he should face, then I think that I would trust his decision.
I want to talk about another element of this. The reaction among right-wing commentators has been stunning. Here is a Fox News anchor.
We're going to vanquish the evil forces that are destroying this republic.
And the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh posted this. Donald Trump should make and publish a list of 10 high-ranking Democrat criminals who he will have arrested when he takes office. Kristen, what do you think is the effect of these Republican calls for revenge?
Well, there's a lot of anger and a lot of animation on the right and the far right now. I mean, you look at Donald Trump's fundraising numbers. In the 24 hours after the verdict came out, he raised almost $35 million. Now, granted, a lot of that's going to have to go pay legal fees for this and the other cases he's involved in. But there is a lot of anger, much the same that we saw after Mar-a-Lago was raided, much the same as we saw during the Republican primary when Trump's numbers went up every time he faced more legal peril. So this is really but it's motivating parts of the right, frankly, even parts of the right that don't like Donald Trump. I mean, Susan Collins, the senator from Maine, not a Donald Trump fan at all. And yet she even came out and said, I think this is wrong.
That may be, but that was Jesse Waters saying that, a Fox News host. I could take Jesse Waters with one hand tied behind my back. The violent rhetoric is really troubling from my perspective. You can disagree with it. You can say this is terrible. This is shouldn't have happened. But the idea of violent rhetoric, we're going to arrest people. Matt Walsh is a menace in that regard. This is not the way we should talk about it.
The guy who posted on the
Yes,
Daily
exactly.
Wire.
Because it's just this is not how we should talk. You can have disagreement without moving into violent rhetoric, and to suggest it is a real mistake.
Ryan, what about that? I mean, look, it's fair game to criticize the result, the verdict of the jury. But it's gone beyond that in some cases where there's talk about going after Democrats and let's put Joe Biden in jail. And I understand that some would say that's the natural sort of consequence of what's happened here. But it's troubling, isn't it?
Well, I do think that calling for violence is never a good idea. That is outrageous. It's dangerous. I'll also say that there are a lot of folks who have good reason to believe that no one else would have been prosecuted under this novel legal theory. And also that there are other folks who've been guilty of campaign finance violations where they've been fined and where there have been no remotely similar consequence, and who think that, a tit for tat response to that is inevitable.